All right, I think we got everything how we need to get it out. I do feel like I'm like a little bit doubled out, but I got a new setup just to try and play some stuff. So if it sounds weird, well, we'll kind of go with it though. But that's all I got to say for that. How's it going, everybody? My name is DuShaun Williams. This is my co-host Christopher Moncada, and welcome to Gaming Over 30, where we talk about all the things that we love and why we still love them. And today, I got a question for you, Chris.
What's that?
How well informed or have you even seen all the crazy stuff going on with the whole Rockstar leak?
Oh yeah, I've seen a lot of it. I haven't watched any of the videos and stuff, but I know about the leak and up to the point where they possibly could have caught the person who was doing it.
How intrusive, I guess we can say, when it came to like getting notified of that information, like how bad was it that even if you did try to not watch the video, you just knew everything about it?
Oh, it was all over the gaming world, and it's been going on for the entire week too.
So it's just been news everywhere, basically.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
everywhere, and to the point where I don't know if you've seen all like developers on Twitter like posting their pre-builds and stuff like that.
Yeah. And you've seen the conversation. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody is trying to kind of come up with what they think is the good or bad of it, right? But one thing that you kind of notice is just very difficult to be able to get away from the entire thing. Even when you are yourself are trying to purposely not spoil anything for yourself.
Yeah,
And I kind of wanted to have a conversation about that, mainly about leaks. It's just what leaks are, what are leaks doing for everybody, and kind of what they actually mean. They're just some of there's a lot of things that I feel that I think it's just time that we had a real conversation about it because leaks were very different when we were younger, right? Like how we looked at leaks, how we wanted leaks, how leaks were expected, what was leaked. It's so much stuff has changed over time, and it's really because of how the platform of what information we have available to the people growing up and kind of really jumping on to a few of these things, and really about kind of like big hacker groups like the one that got Rockstar and many other big companies. Like it's just the rise of them. But it's I think the question is, does anybody really want this? I kind of want to ask your opinion on this. Is like, how do you feel about leaks today?
I think leaks in general kind of suck, but at the same time, I think the industry needs to kind of go away from being so hush hush and secretive over everything and try to start being more proactive and being like, hey, we're going to start on this game, and then the developers being more about like, here's early development for this, here's that, you know what I mean, things like that. They really go into ask to really get you notice like, okay, cool. So when like you see footages of like the Rockstar ones that come out and got leaked now, you don't have as much people on Twitter or in the general audience blowing everything up and being like, "Oh, it looks terrible. That game looks terrible. This and that." You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because that's what I've seen a lot happen.
And you know what? I kind of agree with that a little bit. There's more about it that I kind of would probably like to dive into it on that because while like I do agree on like some of the cases, like I find it very hard to really kind of be behind a lot of leaks today. And I think it's just more of like if I were to say like, do I really want leaks today? I will start with that. If I really wanted leaks today, um, am I getting the right leaks or do I have any control about it? Is it even good to, I guess, consume the information that is provided? And I think, and as a tangent, I kind of wanted to talk about leaks for like the phones. Like every year now, like you pretty much know what the next phone is probably going to be between January and May, even if the phone comes out in November or October, where normally like Samsung phones come out and the iPhone and all that. You kind of have an idea. And half of it is because, the production of it needs to be thought about and worked on way in advance. There's always a bunch of groups and companies talking to each other, so there's always gonna be one way to kinda get into the chain and a lot of other stuff, but then, like, have you ever been excited about a new phone coming out for a while?
Yes and no, I guess is the best way to put it. Like,
Mhm,
I'm excited about the new Pixels coming out because 'cause I'm finally gonna upgrade this year, and so it's kinda nice to get the leaks coming out early so I can get an idea of what's supposed to come with the phone beforehand before you just get the whole big shebang on their premiere event, and then you're like,
mhm.
"Oh, well, that doesn't sound that great," like, if you didn't know what was, like, going on with it. As well with, like, the Pixel Watch that they talked that's been leaking all over the place, stuff like that. Like, I'm really interested in that watch and stuff like that because I have a Samsung Active 2, and it's kinda I got it already when it was a couple years old, and you could tell by this point it's, like, not so great, so I don't even use it that much anymore
Mhm,
because it just errors so much and, like, notifications, battery life, and things like that, and, it helps me to make a better decision, but it's also at the point where, like, I look for the leaks, and the leaks that I look for are on the tech side of it and not exactly like, "Oh, look at this picture it's taking," or "Look at this." It's like, "Okay, what's the chip inside of it? What's, like, the memory looking to be?" I don't care about the colors or anything like that, you know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like, I know the Pixel Watch is gonna have, I think, an older, like, processor compared to other ones and stuff like that, so it interested me, "Okay, well, maybe I won't go with that watch," and then there's also possible leaks about the price range of it, and it's like, okay, so maybe I would might go with the newer Samsung watch they have already released this year. If you know what I mean, it is a
Mhm.
better bang for your buck.
Well, see, then now I gotta ask that kind of question for that is that you are kind of making a decision on what you want to buy it based on information that's not verified. You're like in your mind, you're already like, hey, if this Pixel Watch is real on some account, and I am looking to move up, then you'd be like, okay, I could probably start saving money now because more than likely it's going to be out. But if the details of it come out, like I said, the chipset and all that, and it looks like, wow, this is about the same as a Samsung Watch 3, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to bother with that. And then you kind of discount it entirely. Like, is that really good? Because at that point, like, you already just like how you could have made the decision, the purchase power decision, be like, "Hey, this seems exciting. Maybe I'll try to save up and kinda get on it. I'm glad I know early," versus like, "Oh, wow, that's not really all that good, so I'm not gonna bother with it." And then finally, when the day comes out, it's either gonna either betray that expectation or validate it. But at that point, you're already like, I already knew about this for like 3 months now. So whether it does or does not, does it really even have that same kind of effect if you already kind of made like the decision at that point?
Right. I am one of the people who, which I think a lot of people don't do this because they live too much into the leaks. It's like I take all of them with a grain of salt, and
Mhm.
like I help them to set an expectation, but that's not where my expectations are set. So when the event happens and everything comes out properly, I go, okay, cool, this was right, that was wrong. So now I know this is exactly what it is. And then after that, I go to the reviews about the item. So that way I can make a full decision before I go out and just pre-order it or buy it on the spot. But that's a me person thing type of thing. I want to
Yeah.
make sure I'm getting exactly what I want. I know there's others who I've talked to and stuff like that, whether they're friends or coworkers, and we'll talk about leaks here and there, and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna get that for sure." It's like, "Oh, that thing's gonna suck, man. It has a horrible processing chip, this and that." It's like, well, that's just a leak, man. So, and even if it does, you have to really see what it can do and wait for the reviews to come out. They're like, "Nah, it's crap." Like a lot of people are very, very into like just cutting it out right then. They're like, "Nah, it's trash." It's everyone's favorite thing to do.
And I think half of the reason is because I think it's very difficult for like an actual leak to get something wrong when it comes to like something like the phones and stuff. Because I think the biggest problem is the trend of the phones every year kind of thing. You kind of know what, the Galaxy 7 to 8 was. You kind of know what the 10 to the 11 was, what kind of stuff like that. And so you kind of already have a expectation or understanding of like how much you're going to upgrade it. And you kind of already know. And so when you get a leak that says, "Hey, I'm just validating the fact that the new chip that came out, yeah, that it's gonna be in that phone," and it's like, "Cool." It's like because you know that there's nothing else that's really gonna be different about it, or if it is different, it may not be the way that you like it. Like, hey, Bixby got updated, and it's like, I want it off the phone kind of thing. Like, like I don't care what you could do with it. I just don't like it or won't use it. But or something like that. It's like it's just when leaks are always coming out and they're always kind of validating even like your own perception of what it's going to be like. I think it just kind of ruined the fact it ruins the whole thing of them even putting money into the release at this point. Like, what's the point of a conference and having like a big stage and like having people come over and look at it stuff when it's kind of like everybody's just kind of waiting to see, hey, I told you so, or oh, like, yeah, I told you it wasn't gonna be good, or like, oh, I'm glad it's there, but I'm just not as excited for it as I was when I first heard about it. Like, you can't really be surprised anymore. And I think like in tech is really hard in that aspect, but I think for gaming, I think it's more detrimental, mainly because being like told how a game's gonna play or seeing how the game's gonna look and seeing how people react to it on video games and on tech. And I think this last thing is a really good example of it. People like to draw early assumptions, even if they don't really have the validation to work off of it. And I did see some of it, to be quite honest. Like, it was just like, I just wanted to see if it was even true. And the fact that I saw like over an hour of information and stuff, and I didn't watch the whole hour. It was just kind of like skip, skip, skip. Yeah, this seems like a GTA game. It's like it like I was able to validate. Yeah, this is a GTA game. Yeah, it does definitely look better than the last one. But it's like you kind of get leaked out about the main characters. You get leaked about what they were kind of working on. You saw demo stages, like, but it's all you don't know how old any of this stuff is.
Right.
But on Twitter, on Facebook, everywhere, people are like, "Yo, this game looks bad." It's like it's showing all this. I'm not gonna like this. Like it, and it's like this game is not even stated to come out next year, the year after, or the year after that.
Yeah.
People are already disappointed about the game and just straight up saying, "I'm not gonna buy it." And
Yeah,
it's
and that's
insane.
like it's really interesting because like I don't know. A part of me hopes that a lot of people on the internet are just being dumb trolls in a sense. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But then I talk to like coworkers or like random people and stuff like that. And they're like, "Oh, you like games or whatever?" And it's like, "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, did you see that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's not that big of a deal." Like, "Oh, it's stupid." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." It's like, well, I don't really want to have a conversation with this person because like they just automatically went to the bad part and didn't like, you know what I mean? They didn't want to have a conversation. They just went, "Oh, it sucks." It's like, oh, okay. Like I try to reach out to say, "Hey, why does this suck?" And most times when I do that, they never have a good answer. It's like, "Oh, did you see it? It looked terrible." It's like, yeah, well, everything looks terrible when it's first starting to be made.
And that's the common conversation that everybody kind of has, right? It's like, hey, like it has all this stuff. It's all like, well, a lot of that is really personal preference. If you played a GTA game and you've seen how they are, they're not really known for their best graphics. They're known for the type of game that they are. They're known for what you actually do in that type of game. They're like GTA 5 is not Red Dead Redemption 2. Like, it's like they're
Hmm.
two completely different games that were made at different times. It's just the graphics and stuff isn't going to jump because at a point it's only going to be as good as the type of gameplay of the stuff they're going to allow it to have. That's not going to be Call of Duty cutscene kind of thing, because that's not really the point of GTA. That's not what they're aiming for. That's not what they're trying to make the best out of. And so I just feel like if you've played the game before, or like at least play somewhat of GTA, and you're not a PC player, like, you kind of don't really have an excuse to kind of make dumb assumptions. But okay, let's entertain it. Like, how bad do you honestly think that it is? And then you say, well, yeah, why do you think it is bad? Honestly, like, what about it was bad? The fact that the floor was checkered and everything was white all of a sudden? Yeah, that's not an actual stage. Oh, you were at a random gas station? Is all like, it's a gas station. Like, how much detail do you really need?
Yeah.
When do you ever fill up in GTA? It's like, who cares? It's all like, you're not. It's just stuff like that where it's just it seems funny. And I think people who are kind of just used to it kind of come to that kind of conclusion after a while. And I don't think I've seen a YouTuber or a public figure kind of not. but it's still funny that the grand majority can think in that kind of swing of just saying like, "Oh wow, this is no, I disapprove. I disapprove of what you'd have done, Rockstar," and it's insane.
Yeah, and it really blows my mind because like a prime example of like a game's not finished until it's getting close to being out is like when Halo Infinite had its demo put out and stuff like that. I think that like 2 or 3 E3s ago,
Mhm,
and everyone Craig became a huge meme. You know what I mean? Because like how he looked and stuff like that. And they're like, all right, cool. And then so when the game actually came out, they upgraded it and they upgraded that part of it. You know what I mean? And it looked about 10 times fantastic. You know what I mean? And they were
mhm.
like, and they even did a whole little Easter egg to have Craig in the game and stuff like that. And it's like so that should show the majority of people because that was just a big news source thing and it was going around through memes and everything all over the place to understand that yeah this is just the beginning of a game. This isn't what it looks like when it's the final product. But for some
Yeah.
reason, people just automatically go to, oh, that's crap. Oh, it looks like trash. It's like, okay, I'll wait for reviews or myself playing it to make that decision and stuff like that before I just start just claiming things are trash.
Yeah. And kind of, on that thought, now that we kind of talked about what's kind of happening recently and how people are, how do you feel, or how did you feel when you heard leaks when you were like in your teens, when like a game was leaked or whatever?
For me, during those times, I was actually more excited because it was harder to find out news and stuff like that. And so when a leak would come out, I'd be like, oh, what is it? What is it? And stuff like that. It would get me more hyped for like E3 to come or like heading towards the fall or winter when the game was about to come out. Because like, okay,
Mhm.
these leaks come out, this comes out. Um, they excite me, and most of the time they're usually good things that happen to me where I find out about leaks, and they don't turn me the wrong way. And I think it's because I'm so used to like the movie industry and stuff like that, and the music industry where like stuff is usually announced way ahead of time and known ahead of time, and then like you go into detail, especially like the movie industry. You have like Entertainment Tonight is still a thing that's going like every day and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, we talked to this celebrity and what they're doing in this movie, and the movie is not supposed to come out for another 2 years, but you know what I mean they still talk about it and still like do small things. Of course, they keep as much as they can closed behind closed doors because you don't want to spoil a movie. Same thing with the game, but like they're so much more open about it, and I think the gaming industry needs to go to that aspect so that way for most of the time you can understand, okay, yeah, this stuff is coming out, and then at the same time you could trickle in like the random, oh, and one more thing, and oh, like the big, oh, and this game comes out today, and you can still have those big booms. And I think they'll mean more than they do now because people love them now. But if you know about like a big game that's coming out, this AAA game, and say, okay, yeah, they've announced that's gonna come out. They're working on it. Sounds cool. Let's freaking let's go. And then they go, oh, but we also have this coming out today. And you're like, oh my god, like that's awesome because this will help hold me off going forward. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I think that's where it needs to go. What do you think?
Again, it's one of those things where it's like I agree with how you say it, but I also feel like Hollywood has a problem of oversharing where they tell us way too much.
Yeah, you're
I
right.
mean, if you see the Marvel trailer, you know a whole bunch of what's going to be happening in a movie if you actually watch every single trailer. And it sucks because some of those trailers have scenes that do not exist in the movie at all. It's just something that they had, it was good, and then they probably cut it for some reason, it doesn't matter. But the fact is they kind of already set the narrative a lot with a lot of the stuff, and so it's really hard to be surprised when you see the movie, when you're like, who the actual bad guy is, or kinda like a lot of stuff they're going for, what they're trying to do, like Multiverse of Madness, like, that was one where it's like, oh, you kinda know pretty much how everything was kinda sped up. The only time they were able to really surprise you was who was actually in the movie. Outside of that, I feel like the oversharing kind of really hate the love for those type of movies because it's like you're always getting what you're expecting. Like you're not being really surprised. And the surprise that do happen, it's not really a lot in a 3-hour movie. Like it has to be a lot more surprises than like the 2 seconds that you're like, oh, that character is in there. That's crazy. Mind blown. And then you go back to be like everything else. No, it's kind of wrong. And I think that's what I get scared about for games. It's like games are longer and they have to be experienced. So I don't feel like you would ever like not have your expectations met. But I also feel that in some games, if you got like when they Forspoken right now, that Square Enix is making,
Mhm.
they in the last 6 months have shown off so much about that game. They've shown how it's played, they've shown what you could do about it, they showed the type of missions that you can join on. They showed a lot of stuff that I don't really think is necessary. And in a lot of that showing off, they actually showed off a lot of bugs that the game had, and this was supposed to be something that they're showing everybody. And they
Right.
were kind of, they're overplaying their hand on the game. That while I get that they're trying to, get the hype to kind of release and get people talking about it, the thing that people are talking about is like, wow, this kind of looks early. I don't know why the skins don't look smooth, or like, how is it that you're doing a simple mission and you can't get the talking right or something like that. Like it's just like they're showing off so much to try to say like, look at all the great things you could do. But I mean, it's an open world game. You're not really blowing expectations of what open world games are going to be like, right? It's like it's either going to go left to Elden Ring or right to Horizon Zero Dawn. Like there's really that only box of being a you're being told what to do, or b go figure it out.
Yeah.
That's all that's going to really happen in that. And so when you're like, okay, but we're both, we have missions and you have to go find them. It's like, okay, so you try to be in the middle, but that's within the expectations. You're not really blowing my mind, and over showing me this kind of really kind of kills my excitement of the game, even though I'm like, oh, there's something I should be excited about it, and I'm just not, right? And I feel like they're going to keep showing more stuff from now to then, and the game comes out in January, I believe. And
Yeah.
it's like, you just need to kill it. Like you need to find some other way to market this game than the way that y'all are doing it right now, because it's going getting a little crazy.
And I think with like Forspoken is a good example because that's a new IP, so they're overshowing because they're trying to get people excited for this new IP. Because new IP is like a huge risk when it comes to games and stuff like that.
Mhm.
When you go with the nose, you go with like the number twos and threes of games, like you're gonna instantly make bank and stuff like that. And Square Enix is known for having duds and stuff like that in their lineups. And this is one of those games where I think they had the feeling of, okay, we need to get people hyped for this game, so we need to show as much as possible because it's new and we have a lot of questions like, what is it? What do you do? What is this, a fantasy world? Is this pretty much like an isekai? What's going on here? You know what I mean? And so it's really hard trying to find that middle ground where you're not showing too much, but you're showing the amount you need. And I think when it comes for a new IP, that definitely becomes like a harder thing to do. When it came for another example, going back to it, would be Halo Infinite. Like it's easy to not show the whole world Halo Infinite because everyone knows what Halo is and how it plays. So they just showed what made this game different from the past Halos and stuff like that to get everyone hyped about it. And you know what I mean? And it worked. And so it's
Mhm.
like I would hate to be a marketing person because they have some of the hardest jobs, I believe.
It's sometimes they do have it pretty hard, and sometimes they have it hard because they made it hard. Because
Yeah.
marketing is one of the only like areas where they get flooded with a ton of money, especially because of how many different techniques and ways it is to market something. But I'm kind of glad you kind of brought up that part about like, it being a new IP, because you also brought about it being Square Enix as the one publishing it. And I think the problem with that is that if Square Enix was more on top of their stuff, I don't think they would have to have said so much about Forspoken. To be quite honest, it's the fact that recent IPs that have deviated from a lot of their JRPGs, or a lot of the kind of like the stuff that they're really really known for, and that they bring out a new IP made by another developer who's just kind of part of Square Enix, and Square Enix is publishing it. I think that's the part where like they have to prove that this isn't going to be like one of them. And I think the problem with that is it's just as simple as that. It's just like the quality that you put out wasn't consistent. And now you're bringing a whole nother IP and we're all have to hope that, it's like Tomb Raider, where it's like, hey, it's not really your game, but they know what they're doing. They're going to bring a whole new version of it, and we're all going to be excited and happy and Unreal and blah, blah, blah. Right. It's just like we're all supposed to be very excited and happy about it. But it's also one of those things where it's like, normally I used to believe anything that Square Enix published was going to be gold at one point. Right. It's kind of like Ubisoft. I'm not gonna say like they're the best developer, but you understand what they're gonna put out. They have a ton of games across the board, and you just understand what they're gonna put out as far as quality, what you're gonna expect, whatever it is. If they say open world game, you already know it's gonna be between Assassin's Creed and Far Cry. If they put out a
Hmm.
dance game, they have like 20 of those out. If they put out a rhythm game, probably still gonna be the dance game, but with buttons. Like it's gonna, is it gonna be a platformer? Okay, rabbits are gonna be in there. Like, so you kind of already understand. And so you say, hey, they brought a new IP, you kind of already know how it plays. Like and you don't need proof that it plays like that. And I don't think they need to
Right.
prove it that way. I don't Square Enix is just not in that space for good or for worse. Because I can also say, like, hey, that's probably not the best situation to be in, but is it terrible? And I think that's the kind of thing that I like to ask. Like, it not being the best at it doesn't mean anything. I mean, I'm kind of gone into a lot of different things, but essentially, it's just saying that if you're consistent to what you are, people are going to be excited for what you put out.
Yeah. It's Square Enix is one of those companies that's like I feel is kind of in a weird spot because this kind of goes back to the main topic and everything is like they sold all their Western developing right
Hmm.
studios, and then there's been the rumor slash leak going around that Sony is trying to buy Square Enix, stuff like that. And so you hear things like that, and you're like, oh well, is this good for Square Enix or bad? And I personally think it'd probably be better for Square Enix because then they'd have better funding to be more consistent with their games than where they are right now, being all over the place.
Hmm.
And due to the fact that where the gaming industry is at the moment and stuff like that, like being your own being your own developing company and software company for these games, it's hard to do it by yourself right now because it costs so much money to make the games. And Square Enix has their big, huge hitters for the AAA. Like I could only imagine how much Final Fantasy 16 is costing right now to make because that's going to be like a big game. It's got to have good graphics because
Hmm.
Final Fantasy games, especially main number games, have been known to like push the envelope forward and in this look and that look and oh my god, is that anime character a real life character? That's what they try to go for.
Yeah,
And
and
then go for it.
sorry, I started to interrupt you, but
No,
it is again, it's just one of those things where it's harder not to pick on Square Enix for it, because it should be the case of like you're making stuff that people want and they fund the stuff that people aren't sure about. And I think Square Enix got it backwards somehow. Like they're trying a lot of different things to see what hits the most in order to like fund the next bigger project. And like Final Fantasy 16 probably would cost some money for what it is, but it's not out of their wheelhouse. Like they Kingdom Hearts looked fine. Like I don't think that they're gonna have a hard time making something look good within cutscenes or whatnot. And quite honestly, like I feel like that's just a safe bet, more so than Forspoken. Like Forspoken has to land for you not to think that whole situation wasn't bad. We were expecting Final Fantasy 16 to at least be better than Final Fantasy 15. Like
right.
that's the bar that you have to clear. And it's like I feel like that's a lot more manageable. Um Again, sorry to interrupt you, but it's
No,
just like when it comes to Square Enix, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of I think we could talk about before.
I agree in that point. And I think Square Enix is in a weird spot where I think they're having a hard time trying to hit with the Western side of their market share and stuff like that. Because on their Japanese side and stuff like that, they seem to, for the most part, to be knocking it out of the park. Minus like what was that game like Balan Wonderland?
Mhm.
That's another game where that came out and it was just atrocious and stuff like that. And I think Square Enix is at the point where like you said, they're making slash publishing a bunch of games that may not be good and stuff like that. but it pays the bills so they could do their bigger stuff like Final Fantasy 16 and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's just one of those things. But I do want to go back to the question I asked about kind of how you were about leaks before, and I kind of wanted to say like at least for me when it came to a lot of the leaks, one of the things that I liked about leaks back in the day is that they weren't so easily validated. And not I won't say that not every game was leaked. I probably missed some or whatever. But I think when leaks were happening back then, they were wildly crazy. I'm not sure if you remember leak about Pokemon Gold and Silver that they were going to put in fourth tier evolutions. And
Uh,
it's it was crazy because someone had something written out. They kinda had the idea what was going on. It kind of aligned with what, Pokemon was at the time, and it seemed like it would have been very exciting news, right? Because it's like, "Oh, well, most Pokemon don't evolve or they only have 2 stage, so now a lot of them actually have a 3 stage." And so like, oh, getting a 4th stage Blastoise or like, or Squirtle or whatever, that sounds dope. That sounds crazy. And it's like you're looking at that and it's like, but there's like, yeah, there's no way to doubt it. But you were like, you wanted to believe it, right? And I think that was the thing about it. It's like you wanted to believe a lot of these leaks because that's what excited you. You're excited to see that in the game. And while, Gold and Silver didn't have that, I don't feel that us getting those leaks or like getting leaks like that at the time kind of hindered the excitement you had for the game back then. One of the other leaks that I kind of liked was mostly about fighting games, and I'm really back and forth about leaks for fighting games. This is kind of where is I have a hard time because fighting games for me, especially crossover games, live and die by who's actually in the game. And when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was coming out, the leak roster stuff that was happening was truly insane. Everybody was trying to figure out who was the full roster. Everybody was trying to figure out the number of people. Everybody was trying to figure out, like, oh, are they going to bring in everybody and they're going to add people on top? There were so many people coming at it. There were so many people saying, yo, I got uncle who blah, 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 this, who talked to that person, all that. And they said Venom was going to be in the game. And, you're like, it was crazy, but I think it was more exciting because there wasn't a way to verify it. Like, no matter what, when, where, and how, there wasn't a way to verify like who was actually going to be in there, and they were releasing trailers for characters a little bit at a time, and those trailers were like, they were insane at the time because it's like you didn't think they were going to put in the one chick from Street Fighter 4 into the game and stuff. Even when someone did leak it out, you couldn't trust it, but you're like, that's interesting, but I don't trust you. And then when it happens, like, oh snap, like the excitement kind of went boom, and it's like every time Zero came out, boom, like excitement just kept, rising and stuff. And then when Marvel's Capcom Infinity came out and stuff like that was similar, you can tell the dynamic was a lot different. It's like once they've already showed off that Mega Man X was going to be in there, it's like it kind of killed that of like people wondering like, are they're going to finally do it this time, because it was weird that he wasn't in the last game. And then, that they didn't have a Mega Man at all, or it's like, oh yeah, no, no, don't worry, he's in there. And it's like, oh, I was like right at the very beginning. Well, who else do we want? Hmm. Damn. And then it's like when they try to play the same game, I just didn't feel like it kind of hit as well because the oversharing of the storyline, where everybody looked at the faces and they were like, Charlene better not be looking like that. She better not be. That's rough. That's rough. You you
she
you
she did.
It's like that, like, because people were all, like, they were thinking about everything else. Like at that point, you're like, man, when like the integrity of the game itself is on the line, you're like, I don't care who's going to be in it. Like if the game's going to be like this, like I got some other things I have to worry about. And I think that's like the biggest difference is like while now a lot of the stuff could be somewhat verified because we understand how these companies are thinking. We understand how agile they're supposed to be, and to be agile also means that you have to be flexible in a way that could jump on things really quickly, but in a process that you kind of already have stuff kind of working like a machine. Like as new information comes out, you have a way to deal with it. And with a lot of these companies being agile of how they produce products, how they show stuff to you, you have an understanding of like for them to do a good turnaround on anything, they work it in parameters. And more likely those parameters aren't going to like blow out. And which I feel like is the biggest problem with GTA right now about its leak is that you didn't have any parameters. You haven't heard anything about this game even coming out, when it was going to be out. They had it under wraps the entire time. All you could do is pray that it's something. But now like the excitement's gone.
They did announce that they were working on it at some point, like
Mhm.
through it was like through a tweet or something like that, like something very small.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, cool, good to know they're working on it. And then like having all this footage leak and stuff like that is one of those things where it's like, okay, cool, like they got it all out, but at the same time, like this is very very early build stuff and everything, and I s- I feel for the developers, and at the same time, like it's not that bad of a leak because this is all stuff that's so early in the game and that might not even actually be in the game because they're just probably working through all the nicks and crannies to get the basis of it at this point to see what they're going to do to move forward for their actual ambitions of the game.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, it was pretty bad because it wasn't video; it was source code. Like it was actually
Yeah,
source code of the game being released. And while that is an early version of it, the source code also shows about how the game plays. And with some of the issue that I have with like those type of leaks is that people like to abuse stuff the best way that they can. And if they can find a way, like if you could test out a game pretty early, but you could test out the entire thing, you have unlimited time to test out any kind of bugs or fixes that you come across. And if someone like you do that and they don't tell anybody that you found this bug, and then you're like, game comes out, you're like, I wonder if they fix this issue. Let's just see if we could break the game and stuff. That is a realistic like situation of the fact that like even as you're developing, especially a game that big, you're not going to catch everything. There's a lot of testing tools, there's a lot of different ways on it, but there's always, once you actually have a whole bunch of people looking at something, basically like the whole concept of open source like projects, then you're going to be able to find more stuff. And it's comes a problem when like you the developer can't find everything that everybody else can, because once people play the game, they're gonna play it like a player, and they're gonna find player errors. And it's like you say, it's one of those things that are bad because yeah, they did have a good chunk of it. Like even having the source code added at some point meant that they also had similar source code possibly to like an older game, because more likely they probably worked and built on Red Dead Redemption or their other GTA titles with this same type of source code. And now somebody has it, trying to figure out who's going to buy it. And that I mean, it sucks. Like you said, like for developers, I think it sucks when you were doing so well of keeping it under wraps, and then now it's like entirely out there. And now you have to find some way to kind of work with it. And I think they'll still go through it, like especially if the game doesn't come out in like until like 3 years or something like that.
yeah,
I think they'll still work with it. I think the fans are going to be there. Everybody's still going to be excited. It's just one of those things that now everybody actually has to deal with it. It's kind of like what John Oliver says. It's like, no, now that the information is out here, what do we actually do with it now? And I think
yeah,
that's kind of where they're at with it. And I think for people who do see these leaks, hopefully the thing I want to tell everybody is don't do anything with it. Even if it is though they did verify, hey, this was an earlier build, just take it with that. Where this game's not going to look like what you see, and then just
yeah.
discard it entirely. Yeah, that's the only thing that could be asked or you could do personally. Just discard the entire thing, because it's not like your expectations are not going to meet whatever you're going to see, and it's not going to meet what's going to be coming out. So if you want to still be excited about the game, and you still are excited about the game, discount everything that you saw, say, hey, that looks cool, and then move on. That's all we
Yeah,
can say.
it's pretty much you need to wait till they get the official like release and like announcement from Rockstar, and
Mhm.
then that's when you can start getting really hyped because all this, especially for this type of league, is stuff that is like cool, it came out and everything. It sucks the way that it came out, but at this point, let it go and wait for them to show you that, hey, yeah, we are actually making something great and ambitious and fun that you're gonna be excited about. Because it's Rockstar and it's Grand Theft Auto, man. Grand Theft Auto is a huge seller no matter what, and so it's just at this point where it's just like it's a developer you can trust. Because even with like Red Dead Redemption 2, it's one of those ones where like people were by all means, like the game itself is phenomenal, whether you like it or not, because maybe it's too realistic and stuff like that. That's a different part of the game that you can critique about it. But the game itself, like what they did and what they put out to do in that game, they did it and they knocked it out of the park. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like Rockstar been very 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 good about staying consistent and being one of the people who kind of push the industry forward with their type of games and everything like that.
Excellent. Yeah, pretty much agree on that. I will say something about leaks. Leaks could be something that, and this is just theorizing, but it's something that I feel like developers could use to their advantage. Just the concept of leaks, and kind of going back to like the fighting game scenario that I said. A lot of the reasons why I'm back and forth by it, because sometimes if they come out with like certain characters and stuff that you're like, yeah, that kinda kill, because like, even if the game came out, it will kinda kill your expectation for it, because it's like, "Oh, well, my favorite Street Fighter character didn't come out," or something like that, something crazy. But it's like, oh, it's just kinda sad that, it's not gonna be as big as I thought it was gonna be. And I think, some developers could use those kinda, like, leaks to be able to try and get, like, early interest and kinda easy gauge stuff in a way that costs less. And
Yeah,
it's sometimes I wonder if they do it, right? It's like, because with phones, since a lot of the phones aren't made in America, they're made somewhere else. It's hard when that place that they're probably made, they probably make it a lot of other things, and someone just happens to be there and they get spec ideas and leak blah blah blah. But for video games, I mean, they're normally made within four walls. Like, it's like normally like the company's in there. There's a lot of ways that code could be hidden and stuff. And a lot of times it's really social engineering that kind of gets into a lot of these code bases. It's never really like somebody hacked an A-frame or anything like that. So it's just like I feel like it could be utilized in a way to where it's like, hit if we put out the next multiverses character out, and someone has like 'cause I think someone like leaked like 30 characters from multiverses. It was like 30 character leak. I think they're 15 to 18 characters right now. So like people have an idea of
dang.
like the next 12 characters, but, I didn't really put too much faith in that either, because yeah, might be cool if Daffy Duck was in there. I kind of expect it since Bugs Bunny's in there. Be kind of weird if he wasn't. But I mean, I have that expectation, but that doesn't mean that the expectation also can be betrayed. And if people talk about it, maybe it'd be like, hey, maybe Daffy Duck was the right decision, kind of thing like that. Like people seem like they're more excited about the leak. Maybe this is the right move versus like if someone put in there and they put Elmer Fudd, everybody's like, oh, they're gonna put a character with a gun in the game. Why him though? Of all the Looney Tunes, like you could be all like, kind of write this. Yeah, then maybe I don't think they like it as much. Maybe we got to rethink about that, or at least push him back in the stack. Because that's what I think those kind of things are. Right.
Yeah, I definitely think some leaks are meant to be put out on purpose to either create like a hype or to test the waters to see like, hey, like maybe we have this ambitious idea for a character or this ambitious idea for a game mode, and let's talk to this source journalist over that and everything, and just give them a little tidbit of it and have them run with it and see what happens in the news cycle and how people react to that news cycle and stuff like that. Like for sure, that has to be happening on purpose, and like when you do that, you have to use it in the right way. That way, you can either go, okay, let's scratch that, or no, no, you either that's what you do. You either scratch it or you buckle down and you go full force into it, even if it might be like a bad reaction. So that you kind of go, you know what, like this is a bad reaction, but if this is what you as a developer and as like a group decide to do, then you got to go forward with it and you got to try and find a way to prove that it's going to be interesting and fun. And if you go,
Mhm.
you know what, we're gonna put Elmer Fudd in there and you're gonna like him. Just watch when you play him, you know what I mean? And then you
Yeah.
make him a bombastic character that knocks it out of the park, you know what I mean? Hopefully it
Yeah.
doesn't break the game like LeBron did, but
Yeah, and you know what? I think that like that does work out, and I think when because now how information could be gathered, like I had did like a small like at home project, and it was basically using like AI with Azure. And one of like the thing that you could do like as a training is gather the sentiments of Twitter post. So what basically all that means is I can have words that I feel like are happy words, like I'm excited, I'm happy, like this is, flabbergasted, crazy, whatever it might be. You have like a bank of words that you can grab, and then you also have bad words of like, oh, this is trash, this is mid. You have all those words, and then you
Ain't
can
good.
just scour, Twitter like with like different APIs and stuff that are available, and kind of get that information and have the AI actually kind of set and data, like put in data like how something kind of feels or how many comments were on one side or the other. And I feel like when I see something on Twitter, I feel like that's kind of sometimes on purpose, even though it's probably the one platform that can really branch off to everybody. Sometimes I feel like, hey, if it's on Twitter and there's like a lot of people kind of jumping on it, it's very easy to grab that one single post that has like 30,000 comments on it and literally just left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, right into like a box and try to put everything on a graph of like, how did people really feel about this post or about what
Yeah,
they saw? And you can always, visualize the data. And I think, is the fact that like, oh, I could do that without I won't say not without a lot of effort, but I bet you could do it in 2 weeks without knowing anything. Is like
for
if you
sure.
just sat down and said, "Hey, just gonna only learn this and not all of Azure," I bet you could do it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and when it comes to leaks over that, there's so many places you can go now that like they have people that are legit leakers or like spots where you go that certain people post about like recent era is one of them. Reddit's always another one where you hit the right spot in Reddit and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, this known Reddit user is a leaker for Super Smash Brothers, and he put out a post on it saying that this character might come out. You know what I mean? Like when that was the thing and stuff like that. Recent eras like that, and then of course you have Twitter, and you even have actual like game journalists that are known to be leakers. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Because they talk about like the sources that they have, and I feel when it comes to the game journalist part, a lot of that's probably done on purpose, just to kind of be like, all right, go ahead and that, here's what we have for you, and go ahead and if you hear from other sources and stuff like that about it, you know what I mean, I'm gonna give you the thumbs up to go ahead and talk about it. That way we
mhm.
can start getting it out there and we can see the reaction of how people go and stuff like that.
Yeah, because you feel that there's some people like 'cause I think I have one guy that I have followed on my main Twitter that talks about like the Samsung or like a lot of the Android leaks and stuff. And his language is definitive. It will have this chipset, it will have this, here's some pictures, blah blah blah. And I always kind of thought about like either A, this isn't all that detrimental to the brand because of like
Hmm.
what it is, or B, they have no real reason to go after this guy who does this on a yearly basis. It's like the guy who leaked GTA 6, yeah, they hunted him down.
Yeah.
It's like they're fighting who acts as what time, people are involved. They're gonna go find that guy.
Well,
But
he also tried to like blackmail Rockstar for like some of the stuff he had and everything.
well, it's not like they kind of did it, and they kind of got like an age range and a lot of other jazz and stuff like that. But even if he didn't, the fact of the matter is that he did access the systems in one way, and you just have to trace it back.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they're gonna go hard on this guy, but there's a lot of other people leaking stuff almost careerly, and they're not journalists, and they're not touching them. They're not bothering with them. They're like, "Oh, maybe he's right, maybe not. I don't know. I don't care." It's like it's funny because it's just kinda like, yeah, there's some people that are just like, "Yeah, he leaked the entire thing." Eh, it seemed like that's the kinda like the general reaction even from the company standpoint sometimes, like, yeah, cool." As like, we still have the big conference at, you know, September at 9th. The like, we'll see you there.
It's also one of the things that I wonder if like a lot of these leaks, maybe not the Rockstar one in general, but a lot of other leaks that come out, like they seem like a bigger deal than they actually are, and that's why they still have the showcases that happen and stuff like that because we're very into the gaming industry. We follow people and stuff on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and stuff like that. So our algorithms are always going to be giving us more things from other people that they follow or vice versa, stuff like that. And
Mhm,
compared to someone who's just like your average person who maybe they like to play mostly just Call of Duty and NBA 2K, you know what I mean? And don't really play that much games. And so when it comes to this big conference, they didn't hear about certain leaks that happen when it comes out because they're like,
mhm,
you know, the algorithms are in there. They're not following these gaming people and stuff like that. And that's where I wonder about like maybe that's why they have things leak out because it's like we know this leak isn't gonna just blow up the world, but it's gonna start spreading some news and getting some hype train and making people start talking here and there so that we have the conference. Nine times out of 10, though, you want it to be confirmed because if it's
mhm,
not confirmed, then it looks really, really bad. And you're like, oh, well, you said this was going to be there, but it wasn't, or you said it was going to have this chip in this phone, and it didn't. Like,
mhm,
what the f, bro? What's going on? And that's where the leakers have their problem and stuff like that, where
mhm.
it can bite them in the butt.
And really, yeah, I think you hit on the head. Is like the damage control of it, the risk versus reward. Like, is it really that crazy? You know, like, and I think they do. Stuff gets filtered, and they're like, if people are talking about it more because of it, and it wasn't something that was like got to the close of the matter, then yeah, I think they just let it run wild because it's like at the end of the day, attention is what everybody wants. That's the currency, you know, and buy
Yep.
everybody's attention and have them talk about you over everything else. It's going to work to your favor. Um, and again, this is just really speculation. Like it's, I'm not sure if any of them actually had does the purpose leaks and stuff. I just think that I have also got into the mindset now, which I didn't really have when I was younger, about how weaponizing information works in different cases. Whether or not
Yeah.
it's to try to get people to get more interested when you're trying to say a few things, you have to find new ways to make sure that your next moves as a company are going to land the way that they're expected to. And I think the once the company gets kind of bigger and you got people that you got to please on the top and on the bottom, it comes a lot. It gets to a point where it has to be more systematic. I guess the best way to say it. And some people have to get creative about it. And so like there are some things where it's like, okay. And maybe I have that thought, and maybe that's why I put less into leaks now than I did before. Because I don't think that was the case before. Like when
Hmm.
when a new character was coming out for a fighting game, I was always genuinely excited because I want to know who's in that new fighting game. I want to know if they're gonna, expand it. I want to know who's just who I get to play. Like, especially if it's a crossover game. Yeah, I'm gonna want to know who comes out for Super Smash Brothers. Like, it's gonna be hard for me not to be excited. I
Yeah.
My mind lost when Joker was an actual playable character. And but I wasn't leaked on that. Nobody thought that was going to happen, and that's what I meant about it being surprised and like literally punching you in the face, because that whole trailer just did not lead up to that moment, and it wasn't until
Oh
they
yeah.
flipped the card around where people kind of lost their mind. And I think they still tried to do it within like their directs after that, but that was like a very memorable moment about like how like I just wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting a character from an entirely different game, not Nintendo based, to be in the game. And that's
Yeah.
when like my expectations were blown. Like that was nowhere in my boundary, you know?
For sure. And like as much as easy as it is now to find leaks and stuff like that and the internet stuff like that, I also feel like me personally, because I do this, it's also easier to like hide them or not actually go to them or have them pop up as much. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Like like when it came to the Grand Theft Auto stuff and everything, like the only reason why I saw some of the videos stuff of that is because of like gaming news stuff that I watched or like small videos here and there that I watched about from my favorite YouTubers and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I'm seeing this video because they're using it because they're talking about it and stuff like that, but I'm purposely not going out there to find it. I'm not following the hashtag for it. I'm seeing the articles pop up on my stories and algorithms to be like, oh, Grand Theft Auto leak, blah blah. It's like, okay, don't click on that because if I click on that, then I'm gonna start getting more of that stuff thrown into my feed and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
you once you learn how to use the algorithm for your advantage and what you want to know and don't want to know, like you can also do that. And well, like there's always gonna be some that come through, but 9 times out of 10 you'll have a lot less spoiled for you and a lot less stuff popping up for you if you do it. Like you were talking about earlier in the music in the gaming in the movie industry of how they just show too much and stuff like that. Like
Mhm.
I am a 1 to 2 trailer guy and that's it. I will not watch anymore. I will not do anymore. I will not look up any more news about it and stuff like that. Like it's like okay, cool. You have to get me on the first trailer. If you don't get me in on that first trailer, then I'll wait and see if I'm gonna watch it in theaters. You know what I mean? But if you get me on the first trailer, okay, that that trailer has to be good enough to where I'm in or I have to at least see one more to see if it's really gonna pique my interest. And then I do that, and it works out great. I don't get things spoiled. I don't find out about things. And even now, like I because of me being in school and being like just an insanely busy person, I'm falling behind on so many movies. But I still don't know a lot of what happens in a lot of these movies because it's just I just stay away from those things. And sometimes it's hard because like there's podcasts that will talk about it that I'll listen to, and most of the ones I listen to are usually good about, okay, hey, this is a spoiler, so if you haven't heard this, then cut out for like 10 seconds, or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. And I'll just scroll through, move on, and stuff like that. So, like, it's out there. You can do it. It's just a matter of you got to make an effort, which might be kind of suck, but once you realize what you're doing, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, and quite honestly, when it comes to movies, you really only need one trailer. Like, I mean, I can understand you having a second trailer if the first one was like a 30-second teaser or
Yeah.
something like that. Like, it was just meant like what was it? Percy Jackson. Like that they released a trailer for like the Disney 23 about like, oh, they're doing a Percy Jackson streaming stuff. It wasn't really a long trailer, didn't really show a lot, but I'm like, I already know what Percy Jackson is. Like it's like I saw the other movies and stuff like that, and it's like I'm excited to a certain extent, but I don't know. It seems like it's gonna be different. So I may be inclined to watch it because I feel like it's what I saw before, probably not gonna get represented here. You know, it's just something like the kind of bunch like, but they didn't give me enough to really say either or. And I kind of like that. And to me, like I think at this point, with the expectation that I have and everything else, I have no reason to see another trailer. It's like you kind of got me mildly interested in. Like if you show me another trailer, I might just put on the back burner because I already put stuff until I binge it already. Like I'm not some stuff I just don't watch week after week. Like I haven't touched like She-Hulk until like the last episode drops. That's just how I
So you
am.
can
Because I've
binge it.
always yeah, because I always enjoy kind of just watching the next episode for stuff like that, especially like the way that they kind of tie episodes in together. Like I don't to me it wasn't really worth kind of like, oh, I'll wait a whole week for that. It's like and might as well not start the journey and then me and Laura has something to watch for a few hours or something like that. Like I kind of I appreciate kind of doing stuff in that kind of angle than I did the other way. Anime is a little different. Like I'm okay with it being uh daily episodes because every episode seems somewhat contained. Like it's not until
Hmm.
like the big bad moments don't happen until like episode 9 to 12 where like now there's stuff that's actually connected. Anime normally doesn't really have a really strong out there progression. It's either
Yeah.
all the episodes are good in their own right or yeah, no, I got to really see like how this resolved. They don't really go with that with a 23-minute thing. So there's like a time where it's like, oh, I'm probably gonna bin up binging anyway. So I don't think you showing me a lot of stuff before it even comes out is worth it. Like same through She-Hulk. I didn't see a lot of trailers. I saw the first one just to see what everybody was talking about, and that was it. I'm like, it's She-Hulk. I don't want to see anything else more. Just give me the show. That's I'm here for it. Just give me the show.
Show me the Hulk, the She-Hulk.
Mhm. And so kind of now, since we're kind of like in like halfway to the show, kind of now talking about whether or not these leaks are worth the consequences. And I think we hit on a few things. You know, there could be a possible link that they linked. It could bring some kind of publicity to it. It could be something that's needed. You know, as long as you're not oversharing, I don't think it's going to be too hard or too bad as long as you can mitigate the risk. But it's one of those things, and I kind of wish we had a developer on the call of like how it actually is for the developer team, the people that you don't see,
Yeah,
like how bad is it? How does the dynamics of working change now that people are aware what you're doing and they're not happy with it? Or they're very excited about it. How much does it change once you now have, a few million eyes now on the product? It's all like, oh, before we're just like, oh, one day GTA will come out, one day the next Skyrim game will come out, right? Or the next, Elder Scroll.
Elder
They
Scrolls.
talked about that, but they're not showing anything about it. It's all
Yeah,
like that's not, don't worry about it. It'll come out sooner or later. Well, we still got a few more times to release Skyrim on.
yeah,
It's all like, don't worry about it. But once we see it, now we're gonna be like, oh, okay, no, we have a little bit said. Now the expectations are there, just like how the expectations are for their new IP or whatever. It's just one of those things where it's just kind of like, how are the dynamics changed? Like, and was this all worth it if it was planned? Like what it I just kind of want to see like, do how much does a leak really hurt and who does it really hurt at the end of the
yeah.
day?
I think like when it comes to leaks and stuff like that, like I think this Rockstar one, it was a bad leak because of how it was leaked. This person broke into it, took all this stuff, and threw it all out on the internet. And a lot of stuff they threw out, it's like you didn't need to go there. You didn't need to throw this stuff out there. You didn't need the public to see this stuff. The reason why this stuff wasn't out there is because most of us do not care for a lot of this stuff as a regular gamer. Stuff like that for this, you're gonna have very
Mhm,
small group of people who are dedicated, be like, oh my god, to get all into it, stuff like that for sure. But majority of us and stuff like that are gonna be like, okay, okay, cool, yeah, it doesn't look great. It's beginning of the game, 9 times out of 10, and I think what a lot of developers, companies, and even like well, yeah, companies and publishers do is if a leak comes out that like you weren't trying to purposely leak and stuff like that or trying to get hype about, is find a way to own it and get ahead of it after it's been leaked. Like, okay, cool, boom, this happens. There's a news cycle going around for this day, today. What can we do to control this damage and make it into more of a positive thing and stuff like that? You know what I mean? Like one of the greatest things ever was the Xbox Series S leak when it was leaked out and stuff like that. And all it took was just like the marketing Twitter company to just send out the monkey like side eye emoji retweeting the leak and stuff like that. And it was like
mhm,
boom, they just turned a negative into a huge positive like that. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
it's things like that where you got to think a little bit outside the box. Okay, cool. Like this sucks because we wanted to make a big boom in this way. Now, how can we still make it a big boom, but make it funny or make it creative and make it, you know what I mean, enticing to people? Like, oh, heck yeah, man, look at them. They knew they knew they got and they're going along with it. And now this is awesome. You know what I mean? And
mhm.
I think a lot of companies, developers, some of that don't know how to do that yet. And it might be an old way of thinking when it comes to like the higher ups and stuff like that. Of like of the way the industry is, it's like keep everything hush hush. Don't show anything. Don't show this until it's ready and this and that and blah blah blah. It's like you we're in a day now where the internet is a godly and ungodly place. Find a way to make it a godly way if it became ungodly, but sometimes it can be hard.
So I do have a question for you. This might be a little hard. What is a borderline bad link? What is something that's like it? This is bad, but it barely crossed the line of bad.
This is bad, but it barely crossed the line of bad.
Like
Um,
if it like it and I don't want to give you too much. I want you to kind of form your own opinion, but let's say like a leak happened that it had a lot of information, but it had like one thing that was detrimental, and that's what made the whole thing bad.
I think this is more of a recent thing that happened to me because one of the favorite um, gaming journalists I follow is like Jeff Grubb and Mike Minotti, and they have like a whole Nintendo podcast as well as like gaming in general podcast.
Mhm.
and they came out leaking that in the past direct that the Windmaker and Twilight Princess HD are gonna be shown at this direct. They're like, all right, they came out saying it, and they're like, yeah, we're pretty positive about that and this and that, and it was like cool, like that got me hyped up because I personally haven't played Wind Waker because I didn't own a GameCube or anything, and then I don't own a Wii U, and I didn't play Twilight Princess either. You know what I mean? For those same reasons.
Yeah.
So I want to play these games. So I'm excited for it and stuff like that. And then the direct come out, and they weren't shown. And the way the way I saw that, and I was like, oh, for me, I was like, oh, that sucks. Like I really wanted to have these games officially be announced, stuff like that, because it's been rumored for a long time and stuff like that about it. But I want it to be in the flesh. I want to see like the light at the end of the tunnel for these games because I want
Mhm.
to play them and stuff like that. And so it didn't happen, but it didn't blow up the world for me. So it's just like, okay, well that sucks, but they're eventually gonna come. I just hopefully Nintendo doesn't like just shut it down and stuff like that at some point because that's the one thing you worry about this stuff, and that's where I think like a leak can be bad, but not too bad because it didn't happen. It got me excited, and I was like, I got bummed out a little bit about it, but at the same time, like my only concern is just seeing what the bigger ups in the companies are going to do about those stuff, and be like, you know what, man, like screw this. We're not going to throw this out. We're not going to put this stuff out there anymore because of this leak that went through. Like we made sure not to show it, and so we're just going to hold on to this for way longer. And that's where it goes. Oh man, that sucks.
Gotcha, yeah. I think I kinda agree with that a little bit, I actually didn't think about it that way, of that being a bad leak. I just kinda felt like that's like a, whew, kinda leak, like, oh, it's like, oh, well, if people were kind of hyping something up and then you got a lot of people to attend the direct and then they were rewarded for whatever hype they were kinda getting. I guess to me, like, I see that as like, oh, well, I mean, it was your fault for trying to believe it kind of thing.
Yeah,
I think to be if I had to be honest about that, it was like, but I could see why it's like, oh, when everybody's talking about it and everybody's like just want to see it and they want to see, well, how did they remake it? How did they change it? Then I could kind of see like that. To me, I will still consider that as a pretty safe leak. It's like, oh, if it does come out, it's not bad in this case. But I think what I would consider like a more borderline leak is like if they release information about a game, but one of the things was like a very big turning point in the game. Like let's say Last of Us 2. Have you played it at
no,
all? Have you played Last of Us?
no, I haven't finished it.
Damn, I can't talk about either of that. And see, this is
Sorry.
like a and that would have been like more like a spoiler leak for you, right? But let's say in another game, um, the main character was very favorable. You really loved this main character, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's not bad. They're just, of course, they're gonna make a second game with them, like Kratos. They made 3 games with them. Then they remade the whole God of War series. What if the second one, Ragnarok, comes out and someone leaked faithfully that Kratos dies 3/4 into the game, and they talk about the entire scene of it, and it's like, I don't want to believe that, but that kills a lot of stuff about it. So what, I'm not gonna play Kratos anymore, or like I'm just gonna play the boy, or like it kind of it starts asking questions that kind of branch off, right? It's
Right,
like you gave the root of the problem out, and now it's trying to take root. It's like it's trying to say, oh, what about this? What about that? What about that? It's like, hey, that's weird. Like, oh, then this conspiracies happen. Like, oh no, I'm not gonna play a God of War game without Kratos. That's insane. Like, I don't care how good it looks right now. It's like if that's only like the first 10 minutes of the game, and then the other 50 is me playing with, the boy who's not crazily throwing the axe around or two double swords or like bashing people with
right.
a shield, that kind of kills it for a little bit. And I feel like those are kind of like my borderline. Not because like the information was very, all of it was very detrimental. Probably something that you didn't want to be surprised early with it, but that part was probably it would have been a big secret, right? Like they want to surprise you with that. So that way they want to see your general reaction to when that actually happens and stuff like that. And now if you're expecting it, it might stop you from buying the game. It might stop some people from buying the game because they're not gonna want that. They're not gonna want to be like, "Oh, I don't care about your dramatic story. It don't need to be that dramatic." Like, that kind of thing. And I think those are kind of where leaks do kind of get bad. Like, if somehow Final Fantasy 7 came out and you'd never played, well, you haven't played Final Fantasy, and Final Fantasy 7 first comes out, not remake, but first comes out, and you're like, you're loving all these characters and stuff, but you don't know who dies or who lives. And then next thing you know, Ares, someone tells you, "Oh, don't worry, Ares dies. It's all good." She seems like the main chick in the game. What are you talking about? She dies. It's like if someone told you that ahead of time and you're just like you're thinking about it. Like now it's like you're just like, oh, I ain't even sure if I want to get to that point. Man, that would have really hurt. It's like,
See, I would see that as like a bad leak in my opinion, because then not that it would like me personally, it wouldn't destroy like the whole story or the thing or the whole thing of the game, but
mm,
would be because that's kind of like a climax in the part of a movie where like
yeah.
something like this is this tipping point and now we're going to go down in this aspect. And so for me, I would put that in my own perspective like in a bad situation,
Yeah.
because I'm still going to play it, but once it happens it's just not going to hit as hard.
But
And
that's what I'm going for. You probably will still play it and everything else, but it's definitely a bad leak, right? Because it's one snippet. It's that line, Ares dies. That's like, mm. Again, that line alone, if they would have said like, "Oh yeah, you get to go into this crazy place and there's like a big clear lake and there might be some materia down there and you're having an epic sword fight with, Sephiroth," and you're all like, "Oh, cool." I mean, that's actually being able to fight Sephiroth, that'd be cool. But then they say Ares dies, and now the whole thing's like, oh, what the hell? It's like that alone, like not only everybody threw away everything else you just said, but that alone was already bad enough, and it made the whole thing bad. And that's kind of what I was. That's how I see like a
okay,
bad leak that kind of crossed the borderline. But it's like now it's like, okay, yeah, it went that far, because at first if they would have told me all the other stuff, I would have been like, oh, cool. I mean, like, I'm not gonna put too much stake into it, but it'd be cool if it happened. But like, that's not it doesn't hold the same weight as the sentence after that.
right.
So
Yeah,
that's kind of
for me, that would just hurt. That would hurt me more. I'm like, oh, fudge.
yeah, that will hurt you a lot more. And I think those are like the leaks that I feel like I think they're probably, even though they're the borderline, I feel like a lot of times they're the worst. Because I mean, in objectively, the worst one is if the whole game was leaked out. You know everything, you know the storyline. Basically, read it like a novel, or not leaking. Someone found a way to get a copy of it and then like just played it through, like, or something like that.
Right,
That's like the worst case scenario. But a lot of that stuff, if you know that's what is going to run into, then you could completely avoid it. Like something that's
right.
leaked too much, a lot of people are just gonna just discount it. And that's how I phasically think people are gonna be. Like, if the leak's too big, if they show an entire 8-hour gameplay of something, they're just like, yeah, I'm not gonna watch that. It I'm not gonna do that to myself. But if you watch something that was like only 2 minutes and they showed a very big cutscene, I think that hurts more. Even though it's like, "Oh yeah, it's all the fight. She got stabbed in the back." No, this is fake. No, no, where's this fake ass? It's like it's one of those things where it's like those hurt the most, even though it was so little information. It just had a really big impact. And
Yeah,
I do think some older leagues were like that, and I'm trying to remember some that really come to mind. I know for like some like the um story bits for like some of the fighting games was kind of like that. I know like some of the rosters when the whole roster leaked out. I don't remember which one it was, but I do know it was such a big thing, right? It was just something like, that kind of hurts to know that that's it. Right,
yeah,
it's like this is as much characters as, a Guilty Gear game. Like, there's not a lot of characters. It's like, oh, like if Killer Instinct, the new one was released. That you have your opinions on it, right? It's just like, oh, I'm trying to remember one. I know there was one that was just like, oh god, that kind of hurts the soul a little bit. and maybe my mind just kicked it out. Like, but it's one of those things. I know there was a few leagues back then that like really was like, ugh. Like, you just didn't really want to, because a lot of time people would like play with those leaks as like fake leaks, like, oh, such and such dies. Oh, like when Harry Potter 7 was coming out. Oh, did you know Harry Potter dies? Ooh, and it's like Harry was like, yeah, shut up. It's like no one really believed that. Like, or the other people were like, I mean, I read the book. So I kind of already have my expectation what's gonna happen. Like it's not really like a good leak at that point because it could be verified. But it's one of those things where it's like if something else comes out, of that same caliber, I feel like it does hurt. I just don't know why I don't remember, but I know there is some stuff that were just like, oh, that sucks. That sucks. I'm just trying to uh 30 years is a
It's
long time. It's like,
it's weird because it's like I've gotten really good about like not letting stuff like that ruin moments for me and everything like that. Especially being a person who, like, especially when I was younger and I had my kid and he was little and stuff like that, and like video games would come out, and then I'd have like my friend Will be like, "Oh, like you should play this game, blah blah blah," and I'd be like, "Oh, I want to tell you about this part, but I can't." And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, just tell me it." I was like, "It's not gonna ruin it for me because I'm gonna play it anyways." And at least if I hear it and stuff like that, if I watch other stuff in the future or anything like that, like I won't be like a big spoiler to me. And he'd be like, "All right, cool," and then he'll tell me something, and then later on when I finally get time, I'll finally play it, and I'm like, "Oh, this is the part." And it's like, "Oh, that was awesome." Yeah. Like, I guess from having a kid so early and stuff like that, and missing so many things about that or during that time, it's like I learned to rewire my brain to be like, "All right, like spoilers happen, and don't let them ruin the world for you and stuff like that." You know what I
mm,
mean? And so it's a nice place to be, but I'm not gonna say it's the best place to be because like
yeah.
it still kind of sucks, but but at least I could talk to myself like, okay, I could drink some tea, touch some grass, I'll be okay.
I definitely don't have the same mental fortitude. I'll be honest. The only time I normally tell people it's okay to kind of leak something for me is because I wasn't going to be involved in it in the first place. And
Yeah,
normally when it's
definitely.
like normally when it's like that, because I'm okay with people like telling me stuff like that I'm not going to play with because I know they want to be able to release that kind of like because you like right now like I want to tell you what happened with The Last of Us and it's like I can't do that to you. It's like you have to play it. Like it's like it'd be nice to have the conversation go that route, but that's not fair to you. Because
Right.
that could stop you from playing the game, and I don't want that. But like when someone tells me something like that, like, "Oh, I'm not gonna play Last of Us," and it's like, okay, more likely I'm going to forget because it's something I'm not gonna play. And so not only am I not looking forward to it, it's not gonna take in that much brain power. Not the
Yeah.
same when it comes to, like, a game that I am gonna play because 'cause I'm all like, "Oh, no, you already talked about that?" Unless it's something like I need to know, like, "Hey, maybe you should try and, bulk up before you kinda get to that boss." Like, cool. Like, I'll do like I think Legend of Dragoon was like that when you had to fight, like, um the last I'm gonna call it the white dragon for now, but, like, I think one of, like, the big dragons that you had to fight and you got his armor, like, the last fight with him was extremely difficult to fight, and then, like, it's like you had to prepare most of the game if, like, to get ready for this fight because this fight was brutal. And it's like knowing about that is like, yeah, no, definitely like tell me about that. Don't tell me anything after that happens after that moment. I don't care. Like if you don't tell me that you get the armor, because then I'm already thinking like I might get the armor. I don't need you to verify it. I want to see it because that was a reward for beating him, right? And it's like, but don't tell me anything else. Just tell me like, hey, this is gonna be hard and you're gonna cry. So you might want to get ready. You might want to get ready. And I love that game. Like it's just but I love the whole concept of it. And that was one of those things like don't tell me anymore. Don't tell me how this game goes, how it ends, what I get, because that's all part of it. That's all part of that experience.
Um, what do you feel about like I was talking about earlier, like leaks for directs and showcases and stuff like that? Like especially for like E3 type of event, type of like moments of presentation, stuff like that. Like how do you feel about leaks when you hear about them and stuff like that?
You know what's funny? I think half the reason why E3 and a lot of those other things are starting to fail is because information gets out so easily and so spread out that it's a really difficult thing to try and have like a big thing happen and have show all this cool stuff. It's supposed to be a week of gaming awesomeness. And you're like, yeah, like we had to see all this crazy stuff. I get to see what these companies are doing. But in today's space, especially for a lot of these, it's like, by January, April, May, they've something got leaked out, something got said, and you're just kind of like you're less excited because if it's something big, more likely they're not gonna say too much other stuff. They probably have some big stuff out, but not too much. And I think now that we're more in like a lot of a digital kind of conference, because I think Nintendo prove that you can have the same amount of people watching you just by pre-recording the entire thing,
Hmm.
and then you have people like trying to like be online and watch E3. Like the Nintendo Direct, I think was a very sad success because it's like you lose the whole show part, but it's done in a really nice way. It only takes up 20 minutes of your time, at
Hmm.
most 45. I think that's the longest direct I've ever seen. At most 45. It's basically a YouTube video. And it's like
Yep.
this can go well. They're showing this stuff. It's rehearsed, recorded, looks great. You're in and out, we're done. And when you get kind of leaked to some of the stuff like that, it's like, oh, I mean, it only saved me a few minutes of stuff, right? Like
Yeah.
if they leaked the Legend of Zelda at one of them or whatever, it was like, oh, it was exciting, but it was only so much. It wasn't even hardly the entire Nintendo Direct. Like, it just wasn't enough to ruin the entire thing, and you had to wait the whole time until the end of it to even see it. So if anything, if they would have leaked it like that, that would have been a nice trap card. Like, yeah, we're gonna leak this, but we're gonna make them see everything else because we promise our publishers and developers we would show their stuff off, and they have to see it. They have to see the whole thing in order to get what they want, but also get what we want. To me, that I think when I think about it like that, I think those are just perfect traps.
It's you follow it. It's like, all right, you got the cookie crumbs. Now you're gonna follow it, and you have to go through all this trash plus other good things to get to the actual cookie.
Just think about how scams work today, right? Let's
Yeah.
or you know what? Let's think about like how some of the scam classes. I know you probably gone through it. I definitely gone through it where they're like, I'm going to teach you how to do this one thing, but first, let me go tell you about the story of how I came up with it, and then let me tell you what I kind of did after that, and then they say it again. But you're gonna make so much money. You're gonna do this, but let me just tell you about this other person who also did it, and then you're gonna make this money doing this. But let me go on like they just keep doing like the rehearsal and stuff. You're like, dude,
Yeah.
like just tell me what it is. Like I want to get to it until at the end, finally, like. And now all you have to do is pay $100, and we'll start with the actual class that we need to do.
Yeah.
And you're like, you stole all my time, And it's like it was not like a thing where you could skip the video stuff because they found a way to kind of get that. So you're going to just say, okay, let me just get to the bullshit and let me get to the end. Like it's just one of those things where it's like I think it works for a lot of different things. Like, you tell them something might happen. They either A, have to be live for it, or B, you wait till the whole thing's done. Either way, you'll get what you want, but you have to either wait for it or be there for it. And so I think it works really beautifully in that case. It wouldn't have worked the same way if Nintendo was still doing stuff live.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe some stuff might be there, but people would definitely just wanna go see it anyway because they want to see the show. They wanna see all the cool stuff that's firing off and all that. But they're probably gonna be in it for 2 hours, right? Like, that may be too long for to worry about, like, this little piece of information, but it's too long because that information could be anywhere. You could miss it, and or you cannot get to it. You never know. And when that was the case before, Twitter wasn't really there to blow off information like that. YouTube's
Yeah.
algorithm wasn't really there to put that on the head of your feed and stuff. So you were still tricking along. You still had to go to Verge or the Verge or whatever. All these people that just had like their updates and they were, oh God, yes, gotta go to gotta load it up. They were trying their best to get everything done and like in real time. Now they're just like, screenshot, click, enter. Screenshot, click, enter. Like, they like the effort now is just like rapid fire. Again, the whole agile thing. It's a lot easier to take information, put it out now.
That or even like all these sites already know what's going to happen in the presentation, stuff like that. So they have it all pre-saved, and once it's announced, it just all right goes live, goes live, goes live. You know what I mean? They already have these stories written out and stuff like that.
I mean, most of like a lot of the tech YouTubers have the product already before it gets
Hmm.
released because they have that like, hey, I'm going to put out a video on, and all of our videos. That's why a lot of them just drop at the same time, is because the company has already made a deal with these people. You get it, you look at it, you give your first impressions, and you give it back to me, and then we're going to put you on an embargo, and you can't release your video till the embargo is lifted. And then when it is, the whole YouTube algorithm gets a whole influx of this, and now everybody's seeing a whole lot of videos, a whole lot of information is coming at them. Everybody's somewhat saying the similar information, but you keep watching everybody's video because the context and stuff. Like you get also overdosed with the information when something
Yep.
comes out, and that's kind of what they want. They want to make sure that's the biggest thing you heard that day, and
That's I could talk about, or we could not tangent off it because it's in the same topic, but like I want to know the mindset of people who like break embargoes, like because you're essentially like leaking stuff out there you're not supposed to because you're leaking it ahead of time. It's like yeah, the companies gave you like you know what I mean, the opportunity to do this and stuff like that. And it's like what what benefit is there to breaking an embargo that's going to be better than keeping that relationship with the company that gave you this opportunity? You know what I mean? Like,
see there's I'll say this: there really isn't a benefit, quite honestly. Like,
yeah,
no matter how you look at it, it's like, yeah. I think the biggest benefit is that you had your video come out before everybody, because everybody else can't do it. Let's say me, like with my old channel, if I were to post a video right now about like some new tech, like
like the new Pixel because it's
yeah,
supposed to be in October, right?
um,
And
and I was able to get it and stuff like this. When my video goes live, the day that everybody else videos go live, there is no way it's topping Marquez's video. There's no way it's topping. They don't even need to put good SEO at this point. Like the YouTube algorithm trusts what they put out, and it's going to put it in front of people. Because there's just, even if I had the same subscribers, if you were subscribed to both of our channels, you're going to see his video first. It's just how it is.
right,
But if I send it to you the day prior, you yourself get a whole look. I get all of that content, or all those eyes that I wouldn't have gotten because I was going to get drowned out. All that would have came to me, and then I can reap off that, just saying that, hey, sometimes I can get this information. I'm giving the exclusive stuff. Yeah, I don't think the balance of that makes sense. I think is really like a good short term if like you really need like the viewership, but you don't as a business want to destroy any relationships unless it was on them, and you're just like, I can't work with y'all. Because sometimes the other way that I see that it breaks is just because they upset the creator, or they did something, they said something, or they try to be like, oh, well, we don't like what you said, so you can't release the video or something like that. And you're like, oh, well, bet. It's like people are going to be that's the only time I ever see. I see it more as a personal vendetta than I see the other situation that I pointed out, because it's not really worth losing that relationship, especially if that company is going to be around forever, going to come out with more stuff, want to invite you to more events. Like, that's why a lot of people don't really say too much about the Apple stuff. It's because you do want to be at those events. You do
right.
want to be like, even if you could say like, oh, I already know what comes out with Apple phone or whatever, to be in the thing, watch everything, being able to be with everybody else, and actually touching, doing all the other kind of stuff while everybody's kind of watching you live or whatever. It's a privilege that you get by the trust that you made. And it's like destroying that trust. It's just not really good for your business, because now you can't really kind of move forward with that. And the return, I don't think will ever be that big to where you honestly kind of get everything out of it. I just really don't think it is.
I think my biggest thing too is like I could get someone like breaking embargo because of like the company did something that irked them the wrong way and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, okay, cool, you did that, and I see you did it for like a moral reason and everything, right? That you felt you were morally correct to release this because of X, Y, and Z. Cool. But now when you go and reach out to a different company to do this, to get the same thing and get embargoed for that item, that company's gonna look at you and be like, "Well, you broke this company's embargo. Why am I gonna trust you? Well, you're not gonna do anything wrong to me. Oh, okay, but I'll just replace you with this person instead, who I know I can trust, and just move along and stuff like that." And that's where it really like boggles my mind to be like, okay, I can understand why people may do it and stuff like that, but it just hurts your overall idea and business for what you're trying to go for, and it just puts a bad stigma on yourself and your brand, and like you have to find some way to dig yourself out of that hole at that point.
It's overall just not a good long-term strategy. It's really like a short term, like, I need the viewership right now. This is the only way I can do it. The game's the game. Well, it's all like, don't hate the player, hate the game. But like you said, like, that is also a very big thing because in tech, not too many big companies really don't know what the other company's doing. And you don't know who from those companies are watching what videos. You just don't. If people are doing the job, they're definitely keeping up with what influencers are doing. That's just kind of how it works. Um, I probably would have been too small for like that other company to really kind of know about it. And all I have to do is take the video down. And what's the proof? These companies are not going to do the Wayback Machine or anything like that. They're just not going to go that far deep. But even then, it's still like you said, your brand is really kind of everything. Your brand is how people perceive you in front of everybody else. Like, it's just that's how it is. And if it just gets into the grapevine that you do break embargoes or that you have, it's kind of the same thing as like, oh, I didn't pay my rent. Like, once you do it a few times and it's on the record, kind of hard for another person to really take your honest opinion into all the fact of saying, oh no, like, that apartment complex, I mean, it was terrible. Like, we did all this other stuff. Like, you could probably have a good enough story, but the stigma is still there. Like, oh, but on your record, they put in that you didn't pay it like for 60 days. Like, I can't let you rent out my house and you can't even pay something that's cheaper than what, I'm charging you. Right. It's just, you
Right.
can't do that. And so it's just kind of how it is. Like you said, like, it's just not really worth it. Like, I could come up with a lot of different reasons why someone would do it. I can't come up with a reason why I would say is better to do it than not.
Right. It was a food for thought question.
Yeah, and I think it's honest. I don't think a lot of people ask themselves that question or
True.
ask like, because like you said, there are people who do want leaks, right? Let's. I'm not gonna front that. There are people who do want leaks, and they don't care about like how they're meant. They just want to know. Like, and some people, they want to feel like their own kind of mental thought. They just want to know. It's what they live for. Stuff. So there are going to be people there. So there's always going to be a market. And for something that's a big purchase, decision kind of thing, you want to know everything and everything about it. I understand that. Um, but really just kind of think about like, well, understand who the person that you are. How are you going to really react to those leaks? Like, if I was told, yeah, like, I could see myself not reacting as well to some leaks because it's going to be hard for me to forgive them. Really, like, phone leaks, I'm already kind of desensitized from it. I can't even say the word, but I really like, I don't feel anything now with a lot of these different leaks. And like, I don't care if it does look the same. I don't care if the models or renders look the same because more likely they're probably going to do the planar design. And
Yep.
when all these people come out with their videos, it's like, yeah, no, it's definitely the planar design. Like, but if it was something like really big, like when the foldable phone finally came out, it's like it's like, we already knew it was gonna come out for a while, we just never knew. We don't know what it looks like, and it was suck to see how it did come out and be like, Yeah, that you spend a lot of time for it to look like that. I'm not sure if I'm too excited, right? I know I'm gonna be like that, so that's why I just don't try to put too much faith or too much into it, and I think that's kind of in the gaming space, I just think it really hurts a lot when a lot of your projects leaked. I think outside of being an indie developer, because most indie developers are probably trying to show off as much of their game as they can to get people interested because they don't have that wallet of attention that they can spend on or that they need to go get. So I think when it comes to big companies, it's like, yeah, I think it hurts a lot. Again, I do wish we were to talk to, like, some developers who've had to have gone through
Hmm.
it because I just don't know what actually happens when, like, developers' projects get leaked, and how does the dynamic change? It's probably a good question to ask some people offline too, but it's just one of those things that I was like, I'm very interested of, like, how bad did the leak being known goes down. Yeah. So
Right.
if anybody happens to watch this video and you are a developer, I'm really interested. I want to see what happens when a project gets leaked and how does it actually affect the developers themselves. While a lot of people, have a lot of hands into making a game, and I think when people sit down, they could probably blame some manager or whatever. Someone who was in charge will blame that person. It's easier. I do wanna see, like, how did the dynamics change when it comes down to these leaks, because this just I think it's worse if we all know all the terrible problems, all the consequences that happen when a leak like this works or something like that.
Yeah. That. And anyone else out there, make a documentary about it. That'd be great. I'll watch it.
And that'd be pretty dope too.
Yeah.
What? You make it. Shit. It's all like, what do you mean? It's like someone else make it. You got the skills. Shit.
Right. Gotta find a developer.
Yeah, well, I understand. I would probably watch that. As much as we see a lot of true crime and all that stuff today and all the podcasts around that, I think people will probably watch something like that. And I think like and I think it's good to know. It's good
Yeah.
to know the true consequences of leaks and how some leaks were they really planned? Was it a good trade-off? Was it a planned trade-off, but it went south really quickly? It's nice
Right.
to know, like, what happened on the other side and how people were kind of viewing stuff and then viewing people, like, trying out their stuff. Like, I kinda see it the same way as, like, somehow, like, a video of me showering got leaked out, and I'm sitting there like, where did that come from? You're sitting there, I mean, I'm thinking about like, man, okay, that's at that angle. I'm going to the exact same spot to see if there's a camera there or see if there is a camera there. I'm doing like all kinds of stuff, right? Like someone got a video of me showering. This high alert. It's like it's all like, and this not me at my best. I can't have this. It's like that I feel like that's kind of how it feels. It's like,
Yeah, for
so
sure.
like, hey, like, I don't know what to do about this situation. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how to fix it. And normally, if it's on the internet, there is no fixing it. You can either double down, saying, I mean, I do look good, or you just say, like, I deny everything. That is not me. You don't see my face on there. That's someone else's side. That's not American's ass. I'm just telling you, man. That's not the ass made in America. That's not mine.
It's okay, DuShaun. I also sing ABBA in the shower.
Yeah, it's all good, but like that's how I see it, right? It's just
Yeah.
I want to hope that it's not as bad, but I feel like it's information that we all need. We need to know the true consequences of leaks that happen today.
Yeah. I really want to see both sides. Like you said, going south is definitely going to be like the more interesting one that everybody else wants to see and stuff like that. But I also want to see like the side of where it was meant to be and how they benefited from it. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
That I think I personally think that's a really interesting story. But okay, yeah, like we planned this to get leaked out because we wanted to get hyped. It worked, and then we doubled down on it, and this is why we were able to go from A, B, C, and this is how we got this hype train going for this. And it's like, yeah, that's really cool. Like, you know what I mean? Like
mhm,
that's another level of marketing thinking to be able to strategize that way and to be like, okay, if I do it this way, it will work this way, and then this happens, or this and vice versa in the sense of like, okay, we wanted to do this because we knew it'd be good content for this, but then we didn't realize like the overwhelming greatness we got from it, and so we ended up just it gave us the boost of confidence to double down, and this is how we created this game that everyone ended up loving and stuff like that. Like, I think that would be I don't think that'd be maybe the most interesting story to the world and stuff like that, because for some reason people like bad stuff more than good stuff. But I
Mhm.
think it would be something worth for me personally watching. It's like, hey, that's awesome that like you were able like I would love to see a documentary about like the even if it's like a small YouTube video some of that of like the about the series that's getting leaked and how the Microsoft team was able to get it behind it. Like, all right, let's okay, yep, it's out there. So what are we gonna do from here? We did this, and boom, it worked. It's like that's dope. Like,
Yeah.
it's it's a good documentary, and it's also a way for other people to learn if it happens to them how to do the same thing.
You know what? Now that we're kind of getting down to like probably like the last 20 minutes of the show, there is something I kind of want to do because I feel like that is going to be exciting to see. And I think it is something to kind of see how people really deal with it. But I think the other we kind of avoided the other side of the coin of it a little bit, and that's the hackers or the leakers themselves. Like, what is it that really a lot of them truly want out of all this? Like, we've I think we all kind of have our understanding, I will say, of what they may want. Like, oh, we think they may want, recognition, or they want to be known that they were able to break into a big company, or they're standing for something. But I don't know. Like, I think, what do you think that like a leaker could possibly want for like leaking out information to other people? Do you think it's an impulse? Do you think it's kind of like earlier when I really wanted to tell you something, but I can't? But it's like, no, I have to tell you it. Like, what do you think is probably the thing? Like, why even go through the trouble of all this when the risk of it is probably the highest?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of them like I could honestly see the Rockstar situation being a partly can I do this? Because I think I can. Like, I have a good way to get in, and at the same time, being like, I can do this. I'm gonna get in some trouble, but this might also open up the door for a possible job in, like, let's say, cybersecurity or things like that. You know what I mean? Where it goes like,
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I did something wrong. I'm gonna take my punishment and stuff like that. But someone out there is gonna see like, hey, man, this person's really really good at this stuff. Like, let's use that for a positive benefit instead of the negative benefit that they did it for. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And things like that. So that's where I could see that one in particularly kind of coming from and stuff like that. But it's really really interesting because like what what entices like let's say you yourself to maybe do something that you think might not be exactly the right thing to do, but you see a benefit coming out of it. You know what I mean? Like it kind of goes along that thing, maybe on a much higher scale.
Yeah.
But
And honestly, I think like that fantasy that you brought in of like you may get a job if you can prove yourself. I think that fantasy was sold too hard. I think the fact
yeah,
that one or two people that happened for them, the government's like, yo, you obviously know what you're doing. Instead of us locking you up, how about you work for us forever? Like I feel like that conversation probably could happen, but I feel like people think that that is happening all the time. I think people thinking like, hey, you won't give me a job, then I'll build my own resume. Like it's like one of those like it's not gonna be a thing that kind of goes off well. It's all like, hey, I took all your information, blah blah blah. Like, but I didn't mean any harm with it, bro. Like, I was just trying to see if I can do it, and I'll test some skills. But you know what? I think there's a lot of improvement that you can happen in your system, and I think I obviously I can offer it. So what do you think? I don't release this information. You give me a job, at least 5 years on the payroll. But it's like I don't. That's not a thing that's gonna happen. And it's like it's the delusion that just because it happened once or twice because someone else said it somewhere else is far ludicrous than what it is. Because like I said, a lot of the hacks that happen now are really from the context of social engineering. It's a lot of younger people who are finding a lot of older people who work at these companies who may not have like the same technical chops or don't understand why when your company says don't put everything on your desktop, don't have sticky notes on their like, all that training that everybody takes but doesn't really pay attention to. Like
Mhm.
they don't really kinda get that, "Hey, um, there's a reason why you don't do this." And then kids are like, "I wonder if I can see what Sally's information's all about." You go to their LinkedIn, you go see if they have a public Facebook, you see a Twitter, you see that they love cats, then you look at Instagram, it's just cats, and you're thinking like, okay, what if I said cat lady, and then you say like, okay, what's her age? She's 37. That would have been blah blah blah. And you say, what if I say cat lady 19 something something? Let's put those words together, something like that. It's in you just kind of work at it. And it's like that's kind of trying to find a way to semi brute force it. But let's just say like, oh, well, this person really into cats. I wonder, like, she put her work email out on LinkedIn. Maybe I could send an email about like some free cat food or like a discount for Petco on
Yeah,
discounted cats because she obviously got 5 of them. That must be expensive. So, what
that's a
can I
cost.
do to get her to click the link in the email? And they kind of do that kind of work. And it's like it seems more silly because it seems like the other way sounds like the smart way to do it. But obviously you're just trying to get information. Like there's a lot of ways to kind of fish it. And even there are times where I've almost fell for some stuff. Yeah, I didn't really quite recognize it until like at the end. I was like, wait, no, just pull, right?
Yeah,
Because like once you hit that situation the first time, you don't really quite understand how the game's played. And now I look back on it and it's like, there's no way I'm gonna get caught with that again. Or like now I know why that was off at that time. I'm glad I didn't do XYZ
yeah,
because like this is how I was playing this stuff. And so it's just kind of like the techniques to try and break into this stuff aren't as sophisticated as it is understanding who people are and understanding how people are at work and how can we get the stuff. And it's like there's so many different people working at a company. You just need one to hopefully land into another one. Like you're just trying to find the hole. And I've been through some cybersecurity stuff. You obviously have the training and stuff, and there's just a lot of different ways that like now, like when I see people do things, I kind of cringe a little bit because it's like, oh no, I don't think you want to do that, or like, I just don't like that it's done that way. Like I just feel like it's off because now I know better, and so like it's not like these people were going to be like, hey, I found out what Sally likes cats, and I was able to get her password. You're gonna give me a job? No. It's like, you didn't prove any skills, you just exploited, like, a human trait. No, no, I'm not gonna give you a job for that, like, how do I use that? Like, I'm not gonna make you lead IT administrator because, you knew Sally liked something, you got her to click on something. That's not how that's gonna work, and I think, like, the front fantasy of that is sold to where people are
yeah,
thinking like, "Oh, yeah, like, if I do this bad thing and I do it well, I can get a bad risk from it or a bad consequence, or I can get the greatest reward." And it's like, no, these companies are gonna see you down to the ground. That you're going to want to bury yourself for them not to find you. That's how that's gonna
yeah.
work.
I would also like to see like known leakers and stuff like that that are like known for what they do. Like one, how did they get into it? Two, what compelled them to keep doing it and become like a known leaker, whether it was actually like putting a face to the leaker or being a behind the scenes type of person, like just your username is the leaker and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And then three is like what is your end game afterwards? Not in the sense of like why are you doing this stuff like that, but like at what point are you gonna go, all right, it's time for me to leave this type of game business, whatever it is that you're doing, and move on to something else that I'm doing, whether it's just working a regular job and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like those are really interesting questions and things I would love to hear from someone like probably preferably from like a person who's already retired as like a leaker in a sense.
Mhm.
Because when a lot what I've seen a lot of leakers stuff like that sometimes do small interviews or like are like face leakers stuff like that where they have a face to them and stuff like that
Mhm.
they're always beating around the bush, very like, all right, well, we do this because of this and stuff, and we had a source that came from another source that this and that, and you know what I mean, like because they're trying to cover all the races so they can keep doing what they're doing. So
Mhm.
you get like a little peek over what they're doing, but you don't get to like pull the whole bush down and go, oh, okay, that's what your backyard looks like. You do have a pool, and you haven't
Mhm.
cleaned it.
Yeah, and it is very interesting because you do want the real answer, and I think that's kind of as human beings what we all really want. We a lot of times we just want the real truth. Like even if it's something that we're trying to believe in, we're like, yeah, that has to be the truth. I know it has to be the truth. It's probably not, but
Yeah,
we want to have that verified. We want to be told, "Hey, like this is the criminal mastermind's like thought." And like I said, and I think it's just a fantasy that people have about a situation, as well as the fantasy of the perpetrator, or of what they feel like is they're going to get away with. Like you know, I can get this fame. I can get this type of recognition. If I don't get it from the company, someone's going to give it to me.
right.
And it is weird in cases like that when you have like a few people like dislike you online, it's like, oh, yeah, it's hard to take it. But when it's like something like this, you have a lot of people dislike you because you leak something. You don't really kind of see it as a big deal, like because if one person validated you for some reason, for that it's enough, right? You got five people
Yeah,
like, man, that was cool. Like, how'd you do it? Let me get some information. Blah blah blah. Like, man, you should try leak something else. Like that doesn't really happen a lot, but it's like when you have people for some reason in these situations, like that's enough for them to keep going, right? It's like everybody else could hate you for some reason like that, and you don't pay attention to them. But if it's like a normal thing, if someone hated your last pitch or whatever, then you probably take that a little bit more personally for some reason. Like I just don't know why in a kind of like a leak spear like that switch the expectation of like
yeah.
when online validates something that you do or invalidates it in this case. Like, hey, we don't like what you did. Yeah, but some people do, and I'm gonna keep doing it. Like it's weird.
Yeah, it's like a sometimes it could be like an anti-hero type of take and some of that, and it's just like, okay, I see where you're coming from. It's
I
like,
think that's it. Anti-hero syndrome is
ah,
the fact
yeah,
that you know what you're doing is bad, but it could result in a good, and
mhm,
so you have some kind of justification. But at that point, I'm saying like, well, not every villain is bad unless they're literally a monster that just wants to destroy all life. But even sometimes even they have a reason why they're destroying all life. Like your most of your favorite bad guys all have a pretty reasonable reason for what they're doing. They're just like, "But I'm gonna do it the extreme way because this is how we can get it to just work." And it's like, but did it have to result with people dying? It's like, nope, this will give us the greatest amount of result. But, it's like villains will have reasons for what they do, and all the good ones, everybody's like, That's hard to really go against that." It's not. It's it's kind of like the whole Andrew Tate thing that people are saying. It's like he can hide what he says because he could say a whole list of like a lot of good things, probably say one bad thing in it, but it's like everything else you think about it is like, huh. I mean, as a sentence that somehow made sense. Right? Like, as a man, not every girl likes me. Fact. Right? It's like, it's all like, but it's not for that, other reasons, but whatever, right? It's all like, well, there's some facts in there, and I can kind of understand your train of thought. I just didn't understand how you arrived to the conclusion. It's like, it's like, so it's like I feel like everybody's like, yeah, but we could be in between that. We could be the anti-hero. We could be the hero that just has to do a little vandalism and it's in order to kind of get the point across. It's like, true.
I'm breaking a law or a rule, but it's a small one. The slap on the wrist one.
It's like it's just a fine. They let them charge me. And it's like
Yeah,
it's
I
all
mean,
like they have to catch me though. It's like it's kind of like that thing. It's all like, well, if they don't catch me, did I pay for it? This kind of thing. It's like, yeah, it's kind of come back to like, are you really sorry that that it happened, or you're sorry that you got caught? It's why we always kind of say that is I think it's like even with bad stuff like this, people have random, weird, or other kind of justification for what they do, and objectively, it's just I don't think it's worth it at all because I don't objectively think it's gonna get anything for you is gonna come out of it. Like,
right,
outside of you just validating your own skills, that's the only other thing I see it. And like I said before, a lot of it is not even all that complicated. Most of the stuff is like malware as a service. They found a program online that could affect the computer, and then they found a way to get it on someone's computer and affect the whole thing, and then send them a bill. That's exactly how like a lot of these bigger ones happen. It's just like ransomware as a service. Like that's a scary thought, but we are in that timeline. This is how technology is today.
yeah,
So I don't understand it. As kind of like as a final note, it's like I do feel like leaks are very detrimental. I I understand how the information about leaks can be weaponized, but I always feel that people's interpretation on stuff can go very widely in a lot of different situations. And a lot of times I just don't feel like it's worth it. And personally for me, I just don't want to know a lot of stuff about an upcoming project. I at least want to know that it's coming out. I think that's
right.
the only thing I want you to leak is that is the release date. After that, it's like, we'll kind of go on from there, but I just kind of want to know, what's going to come out. Outside of that, I don't want no new information. Don't leak anything to me. I just don't want to see it. What about you?
I I want leaks to be in a sense of like used in a positive format where this stuff is leaked so that way it can create a snowball effect in a good aspect for this upcoming product and stuff like that. Whether it's a game, music, you know what I mean, freaking a movie, or hey, by the way, this person's having a kid with this person, but we did it in the leak this way. It's like, okay, that's strange, but cool, whatever. It worked. You know what I mean? I want them with a more positive aspect done like that because when it's done that way, man, it's really, really cool to have that happen and stuff like that, create that hype behind it and stuff like that because it's with what we live in today, with how marketing works and stuff like that, like you have to really start thinking outside the box to grab people's attentions for especially video games because there are so many games out there in the world from big people to small indies and stuff like that that you need to get creative for other to have people see your product and see your game and want to play your game or at least try it out. And so leaking is a great way to do it if you do it in the right aspect. And I want it to happen more that way than in the negative way because negative way, like this Rockstar thing, I think it's just not done in the right way. It's the person who did it isn't. I don't think should is going to get any great benefit out of it. And at this point, they're going to have to really probably go through some therapy to try and talk themselves out of thinking that they did a good thing. You know what I mean? And like,
You
you know
can
what I mean?
only hope.
Yeah, you can only hope. But I mean, it's a weird thing. It's a really weird gray area that it's fun to delve into and talk about it and stuff like that, like we did today.
Yeah, and I think today was a good conversation with it. It's just I seen so much stuff that's happened this week, and I think this has been one of like kind of like the biggest thing that's kind of lasted a few days. I know it happened kind of like more on the tail end of last week, but it's just now that we're a lot older and now we're a lot more, I would say a lot, I want to say more involved, but now that we kind of understand the playing a little bit more and we recognize leaks back in the day, some of them were very exciting and stuff, but now we understand that excitement that I had also meant somebody else was losing their mind.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's nice to kind of recognize that today and recognize that is kind of how things are working. Whew.
absolutely. Always think of the other person.
Yeah. With that, man, I think we hit time on that. I think that was a great conversation. And really, I kind of want to thank everybody else that was kind of watching us today. If you had a chance to join us today and you really like the conversation, don't forget to comment down below or keep chatting. Let us know your thoughts about kind of what you think about leaks and how where are you when it comes to like how leaks affect everything? And is this something that you feel strongly, or do you really even think about in the long scape of things? But whatever might be your thoughts, we would love to hear it. So we really want you to comment down below on it. If you have the time and if you really do like the content, we do have some other videos that you can watch. And if we have shown you that we have some good content, then please go ahead and like and subscribe to our channel and join us next time when we're live every Friday on Twitch and YouTube. But this is DuShaun Williams. This is my co-host Christopher Moncada, and we really do appreciate you coming out with us today and hope to see you next time.
Bye.